have gotten us this time, but we'll be out there. Hating you! Forever!
I just wanted to let y'all know before watching this video that if the shoe doesn't fit, don't wear it. My goal is not to antagonize or generalize people out there who don't care for or dislike Steven Universe for reasons that aren't stated in this video. If what I'm saying does not directly apply to you, then I am not talking about you. Honestly, I made this video for the Steven Universe fans who are still active and still have to deal with the dumb mob mentality that plagues discussion around the show. That being said, this video demanded a lot of energy to make, and once it's up, I'm not putting any more energy into it. I've dedicated a lot of time to the show, and aside from videos here and there in the future, I'm not trying to dedicate any more for a while. So trying to start a debate or anything will just be talking into an empty void. Enjoy the show! Steven Universe has become one of the most controversial shows on the internet over the last few years, and I honestly can't understand why. It's homophobia, but it's not just that. This isn't going to be some crystal clear fun time theory BS. As someone who spent years engrossed in the show and singing its praises, I have my own gripes with the series. But some people get cartoonishly angry at the sight of the show.
Can you not see this abomination sitting right in front of you?
What are you talking about?
Now before you say, yeah, well, it's just an opinion. Yeah, well, this is just mine. We let the lolly profile pics speak their piece, and now I'm stepping into the ring. The broader online conversation has gotten especially toxic since Future wrapped up last March. And I think that's because while the show has always had a hate-dom forming around it, with no more episodes to look forward to, the core fanbase has mostly moved on, aside from some acknowledgements here and there. Without an extremely active fanbase to drown out terrible takes, the latter has taken over. It's become a trend to dunk on Steven Universe. You see a tweet asking, what's your animated hot take? And you will find at least a handful of, Steven Universe bad. I hope I don't bring any crazy fans even though they don't really give a shit. It's gotten to the point where I'm pretty sure animation fans leave Steven Universe out of posts giving props to cartoons, not because they dislike it, but because they don't want to deal with an influx of strangers telling them that a show they like is shit. I'll see people getting ratioed just because they have a Steven Universe profile pic. It's kinda ridiculous. So today, I wanted to sit down and dissect the bandwagon around hating Steven Universe, the reasons it's become a show people love to hate, and addressing some of the show's actual flaws in the process. It's okay to poke fun at a show. No harm, no foul.
That show's really weird. Who wants to watch a cartoon about people crying?
People make fun of everything popular on the internet, but people treat the show as if it's a violation of human rights. And as someone who's seen this anti-fandom rise over the years, I recognize why. And it's strange, but fascinating in a way. It's not quite Star Wars levels of discourse, but it's not that far off. It's worth addressing that this doesn't really apply to people who do enjoy certain aspects of the show, but are taken aback by other aspects. Some people dislike it because they find it to be wasted potential of its story. Some people dislike it because they think the social commentary is half-hearted or sends the wrong message. While I do believe there are valid criticisms in disliking elements of the show, because, you know, there's actual thought put into those critiques, the ones regurgitated most are either misinformed, are removed from the context of the show, or are just extremely surface level. I find it unfortunate because the people who hate Steven Universe for the dumbest reasons are the ones who latch onto any legitimate criticism, use it as a cover for why they really dislike the show, and exaggerate whatever point was made in an effort to deter people away from the show. And it works. But hey, if you don't want to take my word for it, why not hear from someone who used to despise the series and now considers it one of their favorite shows? Before I further any of my points, I present one of the boys, Veridis Joe.
My good old bestie and older brother Kevin, Austin Vox of the beautiful Roundtable channel, asked me to graciously talk my talk on a Steven Universe video. This Steven Universe video. I know, how cool. Melanin Energy Dual Time Go. You know, a lot of you probably don't know this because a lot of you probably do not know me, but I'm a pretty big fan of Steven Universe. I think it's a pretty neat show with pretty neat characters and a pretty neat environment that everyone also seems to fucking hate for some reason. I won't be able to throw no shade because this is a fun channel, but you've seen those videos. You know, the notorious videos detailing how this show and the people who made it are evil incarnate and deserve nothing but premium death and destruction for gay space rocks. Obviously, a lot of people have said this already, but I have my own words to say too. Now, personally, I wanted to talk about how I'm pretty sure that all these people that hate the show don't even hate the shit or literally haven't even seen it, or kind of just follow what the majority of people they know say. You know, that it's overrated, underwhelming, virtue signaling propaganda, and not like a perfectly fine but far from perfect cartoon for kids with mature themes. Because I mean, if you make videos being positive about Steven Universe, they only do really well if the title sounds remotely negative or clickbaity as shit. But I mean, that's just how the YouTube game works, and that's just speaking from experience. I can't even say that I hate people for playing the YouTube game and knowing what gets views, but at the same time, there are these videos where their hyperbolic character and exaggerated criticisms are played 100% completely straight and taken completely seriously. Like, one of these vids literally says the show was made by awful people for a garbage fan base. And if you've ever seen some of my past content, you know why I have a problem with that specifically. The whole toxic fan base nonsense. Oh, fuck. Seems very easy to generalize a group of people that you don't know much about, besides the obviously blasted instances from horrible people that happen to be in said fandom. And even then, it's been quite some time since any form of Steven Universe dramas appeared. If anything, the people making the most noise are the ones upset about the show. And I don't just mean now, I mean when Future was running too. It's as if those few isolated instances speak for everyone. But nah, surprisingly, that's not how real life works. Though it's probably real easy ignoring how things work when you can just instead try to demonize a whole group of people who created a show for years and years and convince people they're literal pieces of human garbage. You know, for making a little cute cartoon about the gay space rocks, motherfuckers belong with the Power Rangers for all this acrobatics. Like, just a little more mental gymnastics and it's gonna be an Olympic event. Bottom line is, the whole toxic fandom point is moot and long dead in the water. The show itself ain't perfect, but it also ain't a dumpster fire. What show's perfect besides Voltron? Name one show that's perfect. Yeah, see, there aren't any. Besides Lanta, I mean Voltron. Of course the show has some issues, but what show doesn't? But look at how much is done for representation and education in kids cartoons. Again, let me specify, because some people love to go Steven Universe and do it first, like it's a race and list off some obscure 80s anime as the first place contender. Steven Universe is the first of its kind in its own lane, as a kids cartoon to show these themes and represent them in a respectful way to kids. But somebody had to pay the way to give these executives the balls to approve it. If anything, I find it kind of dumb that it ain't cool to give shows props for objectively cool things, especially when it's done a lot for the whole community. But nah, blah blah Tumblr kids cringe, blah blah blah. It's still 2016 and the show is bad. I'm not a garbage person for liking Steven Universe. You, on the other hand, are a shepherd for herding a shit ton of sheep to hate on it though. But more on that situation a little later.
Joey's the shit. Be sure to go subscribe and check out his videos. As I said in the beginning, there are good criticisms towards Steven Universe, and there are criticisms that are in bad faith to make the show and its team look like Satan incarnate. So let's jump into the good. Now, let me make it clear, I'm not gonna sit and list every single thing I didn't enjoy about Steven Universe, partially because I'd like to review the series as a whole. But I am going to run through some critiques that, from my perspective, actually make a good point. It's just not for me. Okay, yeah, this isn't really a criticism, but let me just get this one out of the way. Steven Universe just may not be your thing, and you just never felt compelled to watch it. And just because you don't care for a show doesn't mean you're some awful person. I've gotten a handful of friends into Steven Universe over the years who have watched it from start to finish, and I also have friends who peeped the show through me and thought it was fine, but had no desire to pursue the series further. And that's fine. You can actively watch animation and not watch Steven Universe off the simple merit that you don't care for it. You've seen clips, maybe even watched a few episodes, you know what it's all about, but it's just not your style. That's fine. Same thing with just gradually losing interest in the show. One thing Steven Universe was known for while it was running was the frequent hiatuses in between episodes, especially towards the end of the series. When you have months at a time to be exposed to other interests, I'm not going to fault you for getting hooked onto something else. The Steven-only perspective. One of the most common criticisms directed at Steven Universe as a whole is the decision for every single episode to be told from Steven's perspective. He has to either be present for everything, or important information is presented to Steven and the audience by extension as a flashback. Now, this isn't a poor narrative decision, but rather one that they never really challenge and push to its absolute limits. The Steven-only perspective does sacrifice some ideas that otherwise would emerge in a story like this. Let's take redemption arcs, for example, a recurring element of the show. While it's heartwarming to watch Steven spark a positive breakthrough in a closed-minded individual, it would have been cool to see a redemption occur without his physical presence. What if Steven's words managed to have an effect on a homeworld gem after their encounter? One episode sees the crystal gems clashing with said foe, Steven trying to explain the crystal gem philosophy, but it's only in another episode without Steven, where the duties of this gem are the focus, that we begin to see this gem slowly shift the perspective and defect from homeworld as a result of Steven's speech from episodes prior. We aren't able to get moments like that, and with a show that has a large pool of characters on top of a high-stakes story like Steven Universe, it's important to make sure this world feels alive and that these characters exist when Steven isn't hanging around them, which the epilogue series Steven Universe Future does shed light on.
But when did this happen? I didn't see any of this.
That's because it was private.
Everyone likes moving parts in the story, keeping tabs on various plot threads, and seeing how it all comes together. The problem with the Steven-only perspective is not that this isn't possible. The problem is that Steven becomes less of an active character as the story progresses. There are many ways to experiment with the Steven-only perspective beyond relaying information as a flashback, like his ability to be linked with individuals he has a relationship with, allowing him to either wander into their mind or straight up possess their body, even from across the galaxy. Steven just gradually pushes off most of his problems until he's presented with something he can't ignore or until it bites him in the ass. And that's not a writing flaw, that's just his character. People say Steven was out of character in Future, or that they really needed to show and not tell. But the entire original series is showing and not telling. But that's a bit of a tangent for another time. The story starts to stretch itself out. Steven Universe was a show that believed patience is a virtue, introducing interesting concepts and storylines, but bringing them back into play at a later point in the story. In the first 3 seasons, this wasn't really a problem, because a lot of the non-story episodes were either zany and hilarious to compensate for the wait, or focused on a different element of the series that I wanted to learn more about. However, as we get closer to the end of that big overarching story, episodes that aren't game changers feel like they're just building up to moments that writers wanted to check off a list rather than being a fun, adventurous series. There's still heart, but it doesn't shine as much as it did before when run-of-the-mill episodes are much more mundane. It just feels like the story is dragging its feet because everyone knows this is meant to be the calm before the storm. Not only that, but things that take place over multiple episodes feel like they could probably have happened in 1 or 2 episodes instead. Take the Beat City episodes after the opening arc of Season 5. I'm not sure if we needed an episode of just the election, then an episode of Lapis leaving the barn, then an episode about the gems trying to get Steven to open up about Homeworld when really he's just sad about Connie, then Amethyst and Steven trying to cheer Peridot up, then Sadie starting a band, and then Steven and Connie finally reconciling. It feels like a lot of that ground could have been covered with a double-length episode just covering the status quo changes in Beat City, where we can cover the election, Sadie joining a band, and Steven's falling out with Connie. And then we can get an episode of the gems trying to talk to Steven, Peridot and Lapis included, only for Lapis to fly off to Homeworld once Steven finally opens up. It just feels like we had this long stretch of episodes so Steven would not have a way to access Lion to visit Lars, and so the crew can buy time to iron out the details of the final story arc later in that season. Now listen, Steven Universe is a very demanding show to work on. In Season 4 is when they found out they'd have to wrap up the original series way earlier than intended. So I imagine because they really wanted to figure out major plot points they had to tackle much sooner than they expected, not only could less episodes have been put into the smaller slice of life episodes, but they also could have decided it'd be better to stretch out multiple character developments over multiple episodes, even if said developments are a result of the same event. I can't confirm any of this, but hey, it at least makes a little bit of sense to me. If these episodes are more like Seasons 2 and 3's tiny episodes, and found a way to incorporate these meaningful character moments through more exciting stories, I think they'd be remembered more fondly. But speaking of characters, the characters are underutilized. I can only assume this is a budget thing, considering how a lot of fan-favorite characters only appear roughly the same amount of times per season, but Steven Universe has a lot of awesome characters that don't get nearly as much screen time or involvement in the story as they should. A good example of this would be Peridot, who actually appears quite a bit in Season 2 leading up to her redemption. But after the cluster is taken care of and everything happens at the Barn with the Rubies, her and Lapis just kind of become decorations in the main story. We'll get an episode with them at the barn here and there. Sometimes, if we're lucky, she'll even tag along on a smaller adventure. They're conveniently read in out of the story until it's time to have all the crystal gems together because, well, look at them as an absolute unit. Seeing all the gems together really does provide a cool factor. And I don't know about you, but I like when my cartoons are cool. But as soon as that moment's over, they're back to being a prop. There are so many interesting gems that we never get to catch up with, or are just never fully explored. These are the biggest flaws of Steven Universe that do stick out to fans. It does drag it down a notch. The show does drop the ball with these concepts, and I do believe that these could affect overall enjoyment depending on the viewer, especially when hiatuses left us with the same episodes to rewatch over and over again. The cracks are much more prone to be exposed. That being said though, there are still bad criticisms, and I truly do not think I could cover them all. But again, I'll hit on some of the biggest.
The crew doesn't use model sheets. The art is bad and they can't draw.
So this criticism is just founded off of a lie? One that misses one of the most basic elements of animation. If you work on an animated production, you have model sheets. Case in point, what you're seeing on screen is Steven Universe model sheets. And I've also seen some people argue, oh, well, you know, they only made a model sheet for the first episode. Again, you don't know what you're talking about. Not only can model sheets be reused, but they are reused in every single animated property you see, and they're not really used for storyboarders to follow. In fact, model sheets are typically made after an episode is storyboarded. Also, if there weren't any model sheets, there wouldn't be any fucking color in the show, because this scene, that scene, they don't use the normal colors of the show. So how do they figure out what colors to use? By the color stylist taking the model sheets and adjusting the colors to reflect the scene. Model sheets, props, effects. They are essential to any animation process, and Steven Universe is no exception, because when these episodes are shipped to be animated overseas, the animators rely on the model sheets and the storyboards alongside special character poses. You know, the purpose of a character designer, in order to properly illustrate and animate the episode at hand. The only reason why the internet's able to cherry pick screenshots from Steven Universe and say, oh my god, look at the inconsistencies, is because of a particular animation studio. Steven Universe is animated overseas in Korea by both Sunman and Rough Draft Studios. This is something people largely ignore, especially when they're cherry picking. Almost every single out-of-context screenshot is taken from a Rough Draft episode. And the problem is, not only does Rough Draft not have the best line art in episodes, but a lot of their work throughout the series misinterprets what Rebecca Sugar is going for. Rebecca Sugar wanted the art styles of the individual storyboarders to shine through in the finished animation. Sunman knows how to do this very well. The characters have pretty good proportions, but a border style really shines through in facial expressions. And of course, character acting. But Rough Draft tries to be a little too faithful to the storyboards. And generally, it just feels like they take a lot of shortcuts, which is weird because this doesn't happen on other networks, just mainly with Cartoon Network shows. And to further my point, I present some character poses from the recent Steven Universe art book, End of an Era. Look at this Jasper, eyelashes and all. Now look at her in the final episode by Rough Draft. Look at everyone trying to restrain Kaiju Steven with a group hug. Take note of Spinell's elongated arms. Now look at the final episode and Spinell's broken arms. A lot of images that take shots of Steven Universe's art usually lifts their examples directly from Rough Draft episodes, or if it's a comparison, they still end up using Rough Draft. And I'm not saying anything about anyone, but it's really not hard to see the difference between Sunman and Rough Draft. So for there to be so many critiques about the show's art by people who really want you to think they know what they're saying, how could they not pick up on this one simple fact? I'm not saying anything though. Also, the Crewniverse is pretty fucking talented. A lot of their art fucking rules.
Steven Universe doesn't have writers. The storyboarders write everything, and that's why it's lazy and terrible.
Again, people really want you to think they know what they're talking about, when literally just looking at the credits will inform you that the show does have writers. However, Steven Universe, just like Adventure Time, just like regular show, is a board-driven show rather than a script-driven show. This means while yes, the storyboarders do make up a bulk of the dialogue, the writers themselves still plan out the episodes, produce outlines that inform storyboarders how an episode should go down, what happens from scene to scene. And then, after the storyboarders do work their magic, they go back and punch up the dialogue or make any other corrections. This is the case with almost any board-driven show. And while the writing being terrible or lazy is subjective, There's so much in this show that you can only pick up on rewatch. Things that date back from the very beginning.
Wait, so the hand wasn't here to snatch up humans for a human zoo?
And while foreshadowing and Easter eggs alone does not make a show good, when there's clearly an extraordinary amount of thought and effort put into a show's story, planting seeds for things that wouldn't be paid off until years later from the very beginning, I just can't call that lazy.
The social commentary is terrible. Fusion is sex, and the human zoo is presented as a good thing.
What? First off, fusion isn't sex. It's been stated by crew numerous times that fusion is representative of a relationship, and it can represent different types of relationships. However, fusion is literally becoming an entirely new being, which is why it's a very personal and intimate act for gems. But it doesn't mean there's any sexual pleasure or gratification from it. It's an alien concept with clear human parallels that are suitable for children, and sex is not one of them. The Sardonyx arc is meant to highlight consent, and more importantly, being tricked into something under false pretenses. But the takeaway isn't supposed to be Pearl raped Garnet. Do you see the issue? A lot of the concepts in the show are meant to represent one simple, broad thing. But because it's so broad, so many people read into it, and while it's fine to have your own interpretations, eventually you are going to find one that's just so far removed from the original point. When it comes to a piece of fiction, it is possible to read too deeply into things, especially when your takeaway is pretty harmful, and interpreting fusion strictly as sex is one of those things. But I remember reading that Rebecca Sugar said that fusion was sex. Someone lied to you. Someone just lied to you. That's it. Also, the crew isn't racist. Rebecca Sugar isn't a racist. The crew are normal people, and I say this because I can already hear in the distance something that some people believe are a silver bullet for the Crewniverse: concrete. Yeah, concrete looks offensive as hell. I'm not defending concrete, but because I know a lot of people don't like looking to the full story, let me just make it clear now. Concrete was drawn by a black man who, as soon as the controversy hit, released a lengthy explanation and apology behind the illustration. You can draw your own conclusions from there, but if you're going to immortalize the crew behind a show as terrible people, you need to ensure that you're taking into account the full story. You have to capture the bigger picture, and there needs to be more nuance behind these discussions. Which leads me to the final terrible criticism that I've been itching to touch on because, what the fuck, guys? And that criticism is,
Steven Universe says it's okay to forgive Nazis.
this Hitler meme. This damn Hitler meme. Anyone who uses this and thinks it's a legitimate representation of the show is not to be trusted. For the uninitiated, there are plenty of people out there who believe Steven Universe promotes the idea that fascism is okay, and that the story redeems Nazis because of the resolution with the diamonds. What fucking planet are you guys on? To reach this conclusion, not only do you have to interpret and read into things that are just straight up not in the show, but you have to actively ignore what's actually shown to you in both the movie and future, both of which were written before Change Your Mind. The finale of the original series was even aired on television. The diamonds present a moral, complex dilemma similar to Aang and Fire Lord Ozai. How do you stop a force that's actively harming and oppressing others without killing said force? Of course, we all know how Aang managed to figure his way out, yet Ozai is still imprisoned even if his life is spared. The diamonds are a different story. The diamonds aim to spread gemkind across the universe by colonizing planets across the galaxy, and yes, organic life was wiped in the process. However, this organic life were non-sapient creatures, which we even encounter some point in the series. They are quite literally animals. Much like how many human beings, who probably don't consider themselves bad people, are guilty of animal abuse in ways big and small. Hell, people literally hunt deer for sport. But if we want to stick strictly to entertainment, it's much like how the main character of a video game can mow down fictitious, wild animals. This is why Pink Diamond wanted to protect Earth, because she saw humans weren't just wild animals. She saw that they were intelligent life on a level similar to the gems. The diamonds are intolerant against those that don't conform to homeworld societal norms, and they don't hesitate to shatter gems, the closest thing one can reach to death. However, shattered gems aren't dead, though they are reduced to disturbing, fragmented versions of their subconscious, only able to generate a stray limb as a physical form. However, the diamonds are not only capable of fixing shattered gems, restoring them to a functional state, but they're the only ones who can do it, much like corrupted gems. The diamonds are shitty, no doubt about that, but the overall point is that gems as a whole aren't that different from humans. right down to the leaders of Homeworld not being all too different from the powerful figures that exist on Earth today. Hell, we want to literally colonize Mars! This is not to say, oh, the diamonds are just like us, but they are akin to the oppressive leaders we see in the world today. They are oppression incarnate. That's really as far as you're meant to read into it. Why would Steven want to take them out? And it's not like he's coming at them from a place of, gosh, I need to make them see that we can all be friends. Steven is actively coming from a place of, I can make them see the error of their ways so they can take accountability for their actions. That's what the story with the diamonds is all about. Not redemption, accountability. To say the diamonds are redeemed is like saying BoJack is redeemed by the series finale, when in reality, he's just finally held accountable. The diamonds are the only ones who can heal the corrupted gems. They're the only ones who can heal shattered gems, and they're the only ones who can get their devoted followers among Homeworld to listen to reason. Steven can't just shatter them, or leave them bubbled, or just imprison them somewhere, because not only would that cause them to avoid accountability, but that would just only create more problems. If something happened to the diamonds, the millions of gems they created, who are programmed to obey them, would just create another conflict. It'd become a never-ending cycle, and Steven had to break the cycle. That's literally the story of the series! Homeworld is still trying to destroy Earth in order to avenge Pink Diamond. Jasper is the best example of this. Her entire character arc in the original series is trying to destroy Rose Quartz because of what happened to Pink Diamond. She goes on a warpath, going as far as abandoning her Homeworld philosophy, all in the name of revenge. She is not the only gem like this. Everything that has to deal with their allegiance to the diamonds had to be untaught, and that couldn't exactly work if said gems are too upset if the diamonds were shattered before their very eyes. Shattering doesn't work. Imprisoning the diamonds wouldn't work. Bismuth, who's introduced as a radical gem who opposes the diamonds, quickly comes to realize that shattering wouldn't have solved shit.
I really thought all of our problems would disappear if we could just shatter a diamond.
Her return signifies a point in the story where we're supposed to ask ourselves, okay, if even Bismuth is saying shattering isn't the way, then what is? That's why the twist of the diamonds being family worked so well, and the twist in itself is actually a clever subversion. Instead of the protagonist feeling some kind of restraint towards harming the villain once they learn of a blood relation, the tables are flipped. The diamonds don't want to harm Steven because of his relation to Pink Diamond, and he knows this. And it's through proving White Diamond wrong about Pink's fate that he's able to convince her that they need to change their approach and fix the damage they caused. Also, unlike Ozai, who had Zuko to fill in his shoes, who was going to replace the diamonds in power? Steven? He didn't want those problems, he just wanted to go home and hang out with his friends. The Crystal Gems? They fought for their freedom, not to serve as a leader in the brand new world. The diamonds help establish democracy in Era 3. It would not have been as smooth as a process without their involvement. And after the diamonds take accountability, not only do they relinquish their power, leaving behind the aforementioned democracy with 2 running parties, but Steven wants nothing to do with them. Last time I checked, Steven likes to hang out with characters that are redeemed. He avoids living with the diamonds in the movie, and pawns Spinel onto them as a way to get everyone off his back. He freaks out when they sneak into his dreams. He verbally admits he's been avoiding them for as long as possible, is irritated at their boastful nature when he does visit them, seeing that they are doing good with their powers, and straight up has an intrusive thought where he smashes White Diamond's head into the wall and kills her. But yeah, these characters are totally redeemed. Considering the show is from Steven's perspective, how the hell are they redeemed? How do you get the takeaway that the show gives the green light to forgive Nazis? Especially when Rebecca Sugar is Jewish. How could you, in good confidence, stand by such a thoughtless take? It just doesn't add up to me. Is it because Steven and White Diamond exchange awkward smiles at each other? Because he didn't kill or imprison these all-powerful figures who, need I remind you, are colossal? Because he had them actually fix their mistakes instead of just removing them from the equation? They are deplatformed, depowered, and minding their own business. They're literally only around now to help and empower other gems. Sure, now they do it because they want to, but it came from a place of Steven holding them accountable. At the start of a movie, which is a 2-year time skip, they've barely even changed. It was basically only in adopting a new family member with Spinel that they were finally able to completely mellow out and truly open their hearts up to change. Before, they were only going with it because Steven wanted them to. The gems they shattered are restored, the planets that were dying because of their colonization were saved, albeit off screen, their oppressive rules have been uplifted, and they practically have a business-only relationship with Steven. They are also supercomputers who were programmed to obey orders, just like the rest of Gemkind. They were programmed to lead. So if we really want to get into semantics, the accountability doesn't even stop with them. The diamonds aren't redeemed, but they're also fictional characters. Getting into the real-world ethics of them not being imprisoned or killed is like getting into the ethics of Goku bringing Frieza to the Tournament of Power. You know, the actual tried-and-true genocidal maniac, who's now off to continue ruling his oppressive empire in a story marketed towards children in Japan? Again, you're not meant to read so far into it that you have this toxic of a takeaway, one that directly spits in the face of the creator and everything they've endured. This is the last time I'm talking about how the show handled the diamonds until my retrospective, and why they should not be considered redeemed characters. If you don't get it after this, it's because you don't want to. Agree to disagree or whatever. So here's something I pieced together over the last year especially. Quite a bit of people going out of their way to shit on Steven Universe actually haven't watched the show. Or at least, much of it. And this is evident through two things. One, as Joey mentioned earlier, a lot of them just repeat things they heard in hyperbolic rant videos. And two, the Wojak memes. I'm not interested in starting beef with any creators, but the effect some of these rants had on public perception is wild. The most popular ones were released in the height of the show's popularity, and they're successful for simple reasons. Steven Universe was a big show, with videos that clearly pulled in views. But not too many creators talked about the show at large, especially under a critical lens. Video essays, especially of the ranty variety, were extremely popular on YouTube at the time, and still are to this day. Negativity sells, and people love to laugh. These videos focused on hot takes and jokes, usually not in good taste, rather than making a sound argument. A sound argument isn't what's going to get the clicks. Making a show look as dumb as possible will. Now, in my own personal opinion, when you remove the entertainment value, I find that most of these critiques don't work and fall apart because cartoons aren't movies or games. So when you try to evaluate a cartoon in the exact same style as a Star Wars or Last of Us video, sure, your confidence in your claims will cause viewers to not question a word of it, but once people think critically for more than a few seconds, they're going to realize how much of this doesn't really hold any weight. Animation, especially cartoons on network television, are an entirely different process, with multiple stories that are simultaneously produced under much smaller time frames than your big blockbuster release or AAA game. There also aren't nearly as many resources available on how cartoons are made as there are for video games or film, so the assumptions made in these videos are naturally just a lot less educated. Yet at the same time, people also don't consider that, like games and movies, cartoons have many cooks in the kitchen. They do have quite a bit of executive meddling, and as we already established, Steven Universe is no exception. Rebecca Sugar has opened up before about a lot of the things Cartoon Network forced and fought over pertaining to the show. But again, people don't think about this. They don't see an executive listed anywhere on an episode's title card. So it's easy to just say, this is all on the crew behind the show, and they're idiot amateurs who shouldn't work in animation. These videos are also longer than a Zack Snyder's director's cut, though I guess I can't poke too much fun considering how long this video turned out, which is great for the YouTube algorithm, and will ensure these videos are constantly promoted due to farming watch time. People tend to watch longer videos in chunks rather than an entire sitting. Revisiting videos typically qualifies as individual views, and again, is great for the algorithm. All these factors brought us here today. These videos were designed to thrive, and they have years after their initial release. There are many rabbit holes to fall down on YouTube, and of course, critiquing entertainment is one of them. The Steven Universe rant videos have a unique overlap though. The anti-SJW crowd who flock to these videos mixed with a crowd of people who genuinely want to know the verdict on Steven Universe. Let's say someone recommended the show to you and you're someone who doesn't watch much American animation, so you seek out a review. If you're presented with numerous videos that amass millions of views that talks about how much a show sucks, and the person sounds confident in what they're saying, even if they pulled it right out of their own booty hole, what is your takeaway supposed to be other than, wow, I guess this show is bad, especially when a particular rant video of the bunch has the likes and dislikes disabled, and only approves comments that support their arguments. Not to mention, there really wasn't an equally successful, equally long, positive review of the series. I assume because fans of the show already knew why it was good and why they liked it. It's not like it was in need of a push. It's one of the biggest cartoons from the 2010s. And other creators on the platform who talk about shows, movies, and games probably didn't bother watching and talking about it because they would just see a kid show, or assume their audience would just see a kid show, and it just didn't fit into their niche. Why take the gamble? Let me put it out there though, just so there's no chance of words being put into my mouth, creators aren't obligated to talk about anything they don't want to. I am not saying not enough people defended the show. I'm just saying when there's only negative content out there, because everyone else in that community is on the same page of, yeah, I like this show, these are the results. As for the Wojak Steven memes, it's not hard to see why they have caught on as an easy way to dunk on the show. But in the process, they also expose how a lot of these people really don't know what Steven Universe is. Like sure, they know it's a cartoon, but I really don't think they get it. This meme often features future Steven, so you know it's up to date, in the place of Wojak, crying that whichever character is parallel to him can't be a better show because Steven Universe has LGBT representation. They want you to believe that fans only like the show for its LGBT elements, or at least that they use that as an argument. In reality, I've usually seen the factor of representation as a reason a bulk of fans personally gave the show a chance, or as one of many factors to why they felt the show was different and a game changer. But not the only reason. I know for a fact the biggest selling points on Steven Universe was actually its characters, aesthetic, music, and of course its lore and world building, alongside the representation. Wojak memes are instant KOs, even when they're wrong. You see that sad sack of a face, no matter what or who is redrawn over it, in contrast to the uncanny yet stoic, well-composed Chad, and you're inclined to believe that no matter what, whoever's the Wojak looks dumb. But there's something consistent about Wojak Steven. Aside from the bigotry, the better show is always something that predates Steven Universe itself. Regular Show, Adventure Time, Chowder, Fanboy, and Chum Chum. Shows that really can't be compared to Steven Universe or each other because they serve different purposes on their networks. Also, I hope you guys know that these shows have a lot of overlap on people who worked on them. Like, not only did Rebecca Sugar work on a lot of early fan favorite episodes of Adventure Time, but a lot of notable Steven Universe crewmates came from Regular Show. Look at this cute doodle of the SU cast as Regular Show characters one of the board artists drew. You think the beef between shows exists beyond the internet? Hell no. And this artist storyboarded the Steven Universe episode Lars's Head, and Regular Show episodes from season 3 all the way up to the finale. So many Adventure Time board artists worked on the final season of the original Steven Universe show, including the creator and the showrunner after the creator stepped down. However, this is done because a lot of people stopped caring for Cartoon Network around 2014, Steven Universe premiering at the tail end of 2013. Because around this time, the biggest shows on the network, Adventure Time and Regular Show, hit their own rough patches, and Teen Titans Go sort of began to, take over everything we love. And those shows having a dip in quality makes these memes kind of, super ironic. Like, really? You're going to make an Adventure Time version of this meme, when a lot of Adventure Time fans jumped ship and decided to invest themselves into Steven Universe because of how hard the show fell off. Steven Universe was also off to a terrible start marketing-wise.
And this hero's name is Steven.
Anyone want a wet bagel?
Steven Universe, a new series coming in November.
Like, the Wet Bagel Cheeseburger Backpack show doesn't sound appealing when I just watched Mordecai and Rigby commit murder. A lot of people skipped this series when it first premiered and never went out of their way to go back after it took off. So it's easy for these memes to spread when Steven is put next to characters that a crowd of people will recognize and share fond memories over. And because they haven't seen Steven Universe, but maybe they remember the terrible ads in the early days, it's easy to plant the idea in their heads that the show sucks without second thought. This goes beyond Wojak memes too. Every now and then the exact same tweet will float around illustrating the idea that Cartoon Network became goofy and childish in the 2010s, which, it's a network for children. I'm sorry to say, but the reality of the situation is, you're nostalgic, and this meme realistically should look like this. Or maybe Cartoon Network shows have always had an appeal for all ages, and you lost interest in the channel before you could realize that, maybe? I don't know, just a thought. Also, we know that Twitter is just wicked wild with subconscious peer pressure. If you see something has mad likes, you're gonna be compelled to like it too. It's such an easy way to farm engagement and kick Steven Universe square in the nuts all at the same time. This leads to the next factor I want to shed light on.
Remember when I mentioned sheep? Well, I was referring to the fact that there's a literal herd of internet people that are influenced 100% by negative opinions and blindly hate anything that's garbage and here's why, or an overrated disaster, or a dumpster fire. This goes both ways too, by the way. If you disagree with everything said in this video, that's fine by me because at least you formed your own opinion rather than just being force-fed mean dribble. The reason why I'm even so adamant about this point is because I literally was one of those people before watching the show. I hated this show literally before watching it and passed on misinformation I heard from other people people to try and support my argument. It is in quotes because my stance wasn't even my own, seeing as I regurgitated literally what others said. And this is a big problem that a lot of people still contribute to. Even now, I have a friend who consistently takes a dump on things similar to Steven Universe and just Steven Universe when they haven't even watched it. As much as they'd probably like to think that it was their own influence that made them blindly hate a colorful kids show, they're conditioned to hate on it because of how cool you are for dunking on SJWs with dyed hair or something. I have dyed hair. Nothing wrong with that. I'm fabulous. But I can't even blame him or others for doing this because it's just kinda human nature. It's human nature to stick to a popular opinion or do the exact opposite in order to seem cool. And it's hard to diverge for it in favor of looking like a weirdo. But if you think about it, both sides are weirdos. Dressing up like gay alien space gems is weird as hell, but really cool. But you're also a weirdo for trying to dunk on this show even long after its completion. Relax. The PSAs are bomb. I'm honestly grateful that my nephew gets to grow up with mature shit like this. Hey wait, Kev, do I get paid for this?
To build off Joey's points, bless his soul, it's time to make him the new Hawaiian Punch mascot because I can't believe that's a hat! I want to share a longtime theory I've had about the Steven Universe hate train. It's something I thought about for years and has only been supported with time. As many of you know, Steven Universe was a bit more under the radar its first year on television. Again, the marketing didn't do it justice. A lot of long-term Cartoon Network viewers from the late 90s and early 2000s were losing interest in the channel in general, and this show appeared to be mainly episodic at the time. And although every internet critic talks about Steven Universe's story and pacing issues, Adventure Time's own issues at the time were leaving a mixed taste in people's mouths. People wanted Adventure Time to explore more of the interesting shit it set up and focus on a more serialized narrative. And instead, the Lich turned into a baby, the status quo was reinforced with Finn's arm, and the show decided to focus on Finn's love life again. Of course the show would pick up again story-wise, but once the Lich transformed into Sweet Pea, the initial potential of what Adventure Time could be felt stifled. But Steven Universe throughout his first season was slowly interweaving an interesting narrative around the main characters actually being alien fugitives from another world, and that a lot of the places the Crystal Gems would venture out to were historically significant to a war they fought in. The audience was questioning what was really going on, and if the heroes were even heroes, all while this neat little kids cartoon was teasing a dark alien invasion.
Like aliens, Steven! Aliens who invaded Earth!
Everything changed on March 12, 2015, when the season finale episodes The Return and Jailbreak premiered on Cartoon Network at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. After following a week of episodes that featured one continuous plot, Jailbreak would go on to define Steven Universe, revealing that one of the lead characters, Garnet, is actually the personification of a loving relationship. A relationship that had to rebel against the society they came from because they were rejected otherwise. And because we understood through these episodes that all gems are basically female, it was easy to understand how this was representative of an interracial LGBT relationship.
How dare you fuse with a member of my court?
And as someone who was in an interracial relationship, dealing with their racist parents, this caught my attention.
This fucking show, it gets me.
Garnet's comeback is then followed by her having an anime battle with Jasper that doubles as a rockin' musical number that would be taken over by Undertale by the end of the year. And after Jasper gets her ass kicked, the ship crashes back on Earth with another antagonist, Peridot, escaping. Jasper convinces Lapis, one of Steven's allies, to fuse with her in order to defeat the Crystal Gems because Lapis has her own issues with them. Lapis accepts, the two become a giant kaiju until Lapis's half of the fusion takes over and drags them into the ocean, restraining the fusion Malachite until further notice. All of these moments got uploaded into clips on YouTube, and the show began to spread like wildfire. It wasn't just the LGBT relationship, it was the dope song, the anime influence, and of course, the sign of potential. It was refreshing to see Cartoon Network bounce back from two of their biggest shows taking a hit in quality with a show that could be bizarre, hilarious, and charming, yet has an actual focus on a dark, action-packed, overarching story. One that has something insightful to say. Themes that haven't been fully explored on children's television, especially when Legend of Korra's ending a few months prior soured fans, because after putting us through love triangles and relationship drama, we didn't even get to see Korra and Asami thrive as a couple. A lot of fans, me included, thought they were shoehorned in, because although there were a lot of breadcrumbs and hints throughout Book 4, Nickelodeon forbid them from being transparent with it. So of course Steven Universe felt like a breath of fresh air, especially when Cartoon Network was already pushing back Bubbly. Keeping up with the animation scene at the time, it's easy to see why Steven Universe took off. But I do believe the attention and pro-Steven Universe bandwagon created the anti-Steven Universe bandwagon. for animation fans who weren't crazy about it, because either again, it just wasn't for them, or maybe they felt a different animated series was more deserving of the spotlight, it'd be pretty easy to get irritated by the massive influx of people raving about it, calling it the best cartoon ever. And because the internet's gonna internet, at least a chunk of those people are going to go from not caring about it to absolutely despising it. Steven Universe also had constant anime comparisons because of its obvious anime, manga, and video game influences, alongside its serialized nature tackling the story in arcs. And because anime was finally making a name for itself in the mainstream, as an anime fan myself, I think a percentage of anime fans grew cynical towards Steven Universe. And of course, if they go check out a clip of a Steven Universe fight scene, they are not going to be blown away in the same manner that they would be with a high-scale, high-stakes anime fight scene. So as the show grew, the portion of anime fans who disliked it grew as well, seeing it as a pale imitation, a lame cartoon that's nothing special, because it's trying to do something that anime's already done. Which is dumb. And if you think I'm making assumptions or being a bit dramatic, back in March when the final episode of Steven Universe Future premiered, a tweet I made praising the episode Growing Pains went viral, as I attached a clip of the scene where Steven is diagnosed with PTSD due to the events of the original series. Of course, this was unique to see in a Western animated show, especially on Cartoon Network. It was impactful that they would talk about this story, and this is coming from someone who grew up physically abused and would watch Cartoon Network looking for escapism. And that tweet going viral invited a flock of anime fanboys who had to knock it, saying, "Show don't tell, anime did it first," even though Steven's PTSD is pretty evident throughout most of the series, as early as season 2. And it was only vocalized to him here because he went to the doctors for the first time in his life. So, you know, he's going to have the conversation anyone would with a doctor about this sort of thing. Him realizing he has PTSD doesn't mean it's the audience's first time realizing it. We already understood it, but it was still chilling for a Cartoon Network show to make that confirmation nonetheless, especially when it's the main character of a show having to absorb all of that information. Also, how are you supposed to explain that to kids in a way that doesn't vocalize what the disorder is? Like, for example, a counter-argument to the scene, which I don't know why the impact of the scene needs a counter-argument, was an episode of Teen Titans where Robin begins to hallucinate Slade around Titan's tower, even though Slade is long gone. Yes, this was exploring PTSD. Yes, it cemented Robin as a character who has symptoms of PTSD. But these two things are not the same thing. Robin was obsessing over the possibility of Slade still being out there. But not only that, the reason why he began to hallucinate Slade was literally because there was a hallucinogen within Slade's mask that was activated the moment Robin came into contact with it. He was literally being drugged. How is this comparable at all with Steven Universe Future?
His mask contained a chemical reagent that infiltrated your central nervous system.
It made me see, hear, and feel Slade.
These two things are not the same thing. I would not say an episode of Teen Titans would cause that kid to go, "Oh, I get it, it's PTSD." Like, yeah, you'll understand that Robin's been through some shit. You'll understand that what he's been through with Slade, it left a pretty damaging mark on him. But if they don't already know what PTSD is, I'm not sure they're going to recognize what exactly is happening within Robin. With Steven Universe, we saw that the gems were processing their own trauma, so the viewers are able to recognize that there's something wrong developing within Steven. But by directly vocalizing it to the audience, not only does that cement what we already knew about Steven, but now kids are going to be able to have a much clearer idea of what's going on with themselves. Don't get me wrong, that episode of Teen Titans is very good, but it was going from something different from what this episode of Future was going for. Yes, they're tackling similar subjects, but they are doing so in different ways. It's not even that they aren't comparable, it's that they're not comparable in the sense of, oh, who did it better? So because these PSAs are still happening at the time of this video being written, they gotta be included. Although the animated series is over, Cartoon Network, Rebecca Sugar, and Ian Jones-Cordy have been working on new shorts to stand against racism, released online and aired on TV. And although most of the core fans have seen these shorts, the "it's popular to hate Steven Universe" mentality really shines through every single time. The first PSA people had a problem with because they thought it was cringy, or that it was too on the nose, or why would the white kid be racist but not homophobic? But more more than anything, it was homophobia.
wrong.
You can say I'm bullshitting all you want, but this has an alarming dislike ratio, especially when compared to the second PSA, because the PSA itself doesn't acknowledge that it features two gay kids who talk about getting married. Even though if it was a boy and a girl, this wouldn't even be an issue for these people. It'd just be another cute commercial to them. I really don't want to waste too much time talking directly to homophobes. The reality is a lot of my LGBT friends kind of figured out who they were and who they were into at an early age, and admitted they either repressed it for years or just kept to themselves until high school or college. But we're at an age where people shouldn't feel like they have to force themselves onto someone because society tells them to. Because again, they're just gonna figure out that they aren't into guys or they aren't into girls eventually. But just letting kids know, hey, a guy dating a guy, a girl dating a girl, is just as normal as a boy and girl dating. And guess what? If you don't agree with that, there really is nothing you can do about it. You can be a keyboard warrior all you want, but times are changing, old man. And because these are the lives of other human beings who do not concern you, it's not just a matter of opinion. Mind your own fucking business. Putting this on TV isn't indoctrination or any of that bullshit. It's just being honest and acknowledging the existence of people different than yourself. People come from families with two dads or two moms. They have a right for their families to be seen. And being gay ain't a sexual thing like you weirdos make it out to be. Because guess what? You can be gay and not be interested in sex. Just like how you can be straight and not be interested in sex. As for it's too on the nose, people ignore that this PSA is self-aware and that the first 30 seconds are meant to be cheesy before steering into a more casual and honest conversation. I'm not gonna act like we haven't heard this happens in real life, it ain't just in movies before, but considering how many non-black friends texted me in June and July about how they realized racism was an actual problem, maybe this does need to be hammered in some more when kids are still kids. And yeah, it's really just the anti-SJW crowd or people playing the woke Olympics that hate on the PSAs. The second PSA was pretty inoffensive, but I saw people throwing around the fact that Cartoon Network canceled OKKO as a reason to invalidate them producing the PSAs. And it's like, dude, Ian made OKKO and wrote these PSAs with Rebecca, his wife. You don't look that good using a black man's show being canceled against commercials that he had direct input in. And while I don't really have an issue with any adults calling a PSA cringy because, yeah, ultimately it's intended for kids media is going to have moments that come off as cringy the older you get, the hate just feels like a chase for clout every time. And this is a problem that surrounds Cartoon Network's efforts at raising awareness in general, but at least Cartoon Network stands their ground and doesn't disable the replies or anything, even though it saved them a headache. The PSAs are fine. I wish we had more of this when I was a kid, and I'm glad these messages are being broadcasted to a wide audience. So what I just said about things getting cringier when you're older is something else I want to focus on a little bit more in this conversation. Steven Universe ran for a long time, almost 7 years, and you can change a lot as a person during that time. And Steven Universe is a show where its impact is very relative to whatever is happening in your life. A big reason why this show is going to stick with me is because it resonated with me through a lot of hard times. Hell, the episode that made me a devoted fan wasn't even Jailbreak, but the episode afterwards. As Steven's feelings and potentially having to cut off his best friend and love interest felt like the show was looking right into my soul with the aforementioned relationship I was in at the time. As the story progressed, it felt like it was calling me out on my shit, while also giving me reassurance through the show's themes, helping me realize and acknowledge all the incredible people and fortunes in my life. The things that make life worth living. A lot of the little moments in the show still stick out to me to this day. But that being said, there are a lot of big moments that don't hit the same. Maybe there's an action sequence that doesn't wow me on a technical level like it used to. Maybe the voice acting or dialogue in a scene feels a bit dodgy now. Maybe there were moments in general that I just found to be really cool or really funny that I just find kinda kiddie and underwhelming now. And that's okay. That's a part of growing up. The things you liked when you were younger, you're not always going to like as much, or you will outgrow before becoming nostalgic for it. Hell, this is directly shown in Steven Universe Future. The episode Snow Day does a great job at showcasing how Steven has outgrown his old routines, habits, and interests now that he's older. If you're someone who used to love the show, but you lost interest or are losing interest, or you feel like parts of it didn't age well, maybe you feel like an episode isn't as good now as it was back then, that's just a part of life. You may be able to revisit the show and find an entirely new appreciation for it in a few years, if not now. But if for now, it's not your thing, you grew out of it, that's more than fine. But you shouldn't be ashamed of your roots. We all cringe at how we can be in our younger years, especially in our fandom days. But if it was an important and happy time of your life, then I encourage that you remember it fondly. To end this video on a positive note, after discussing so much negativity, I just want to put it out there that Steven Universe never claimed to be the best cartoon ever, or that it was the most progressive thing to exist since sliced bread. No one on the crew ever came with that energy. It's too easy for people to see the amount of praise fans give something they dislike and associate the words of the fans with the faces of the people behind said thing or the thing itself. Steven Universe is a cartoon, not a person. It cannot call itself one of the best cartoons. It cannot call itself a masterpiece. It cannot call itself anything. As Joey said, Steven Universe is the first of its kind in its own lane. It's a stepping stone. There was definitely nothing like Steven Universe on Cartoon Network, or children's television in general, and it did make strides that affected animation as a whole. And because of the strides the show made, we will see more like it, and whatever Rebecca Sugar's next project is, I'm sure they'll push the boundaries even further in ways Cartoon Network wouldn't go for. With dunking on its representation, the people who knock Steven Universe for things that have come after it baffle me because chances are representation in other cartoons only got to go for it because of Steven. I've talked about this before, but the Ruby and Sapphire wedding is what opened the gates for direct representation of LGBT relationships at Cartoon Network in itself. But Catradora? Lumity? These companies are only allowing for these creators to go for it because Steven Universe showed that yes, shows can do this, and they will get positive attention. They will get acclaim. It will be successful. And I'm sure more cartoons will go for a serialized, story-driven approach because of Steven Universe as well. One day, I'm sure there will be plenty of cartoons that people will consider better than Steven Universe for a lot of the elements that were present in the show. But that doesn't make the show retroactively bad. It simply means that studios and their talent were able to build off of what Steven Universe did. The show is over, and for those who care about the medium of animation and the conversation of representation in media, it's going to be more productive in the long run to talk about how animated series going forward can build off Steven Universe, and not just nitpicking and reaching for why the show is garbage every time cartoons come up in an internet conversation. It's 2021 now, and we need to leave the Steven Universe discourse behind. More PSAs are going to come out after this video, so I'm prepared for the brain dead takes to continue. But hey, I hope now you at least have a video you can link whenever you see them pop up yourself. I don't really care if I change anyone's minds, if they already have a perpetual stick up their ass when it comes to the show. But if you made it this far, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed yourselves, and if you did, please feel free to throw a like and subscribe. Special thanks to ARTWITHKODA for creating an awesome thumbnail. For more of his wonderful art, you can find him on Tumblr and Instagram at ARTWITHKODA, and subscribe to his YouTube channel. Link down below in the description. Shout out to our patrons, and we'll see you next time.